Hi, everyone.
Happy Tuesday. Brian Davis and Deni Sipley here from Spark Rental, and we are joined today by John Maxim, who at 44 years old is not only financially independent, but he has been financially independent for years now. So, John, welcome to the show.
Absolutely.
Welcome. Nice to meet everybody. Happy to
Well,
be
we
here.
are super excited to have you with us today and to talk about exactly how you have achieved what you have achieved and how other people can follow in your footsteps. So, without further ado, let's rewind to the very beginning and talk about what you did before you got into real estate investing and how you got into investing. You know, your first property, how you found it, all those juicy details.
Yeah, so we got to go back to when I was 21 years old.
Wow.
I think I was donating plasma for a living for the most part. A lot of college parties and just barely making ends meet. And so I got into real estate investing kind of by accident almost. Me and my roommates were in a 2-bedroom apartment in, by Utah standards, the biggest ghetto in the state. We're in this 2-bedroom apartment, 4 of us sharing a room, and we just kind of were like, man, it seems like we could buy a house and have our own rooms and pay about the same, So we went out and looked, and against our parents, of course, and everybody was like, you shouldn't buy houses with your friends. We did it anyway. So we bought a house. 3 of us. One guy listened to his mom and decided not to get into it. So the 3 of us bought a house, and it wasn't very long before we thought to ourselves, we're really good friends. Why don't the 4 of us, even though this is the thing we wanted to get away from, why don't the 4 of us share this one big room in the house and we can rent the other rooms out? And then next thing I know, so it had a converted garage, a 1-car garage that had been converted into like a living space. So the 3 of us got bunk beds in there, and then we rented all 4 of the bedrooms out, for like, I think it was $300 a month back then for a bedroom in a shared house, and basically made up our own little fraternity, kind of situation. And then, that covered our whole mortgage. And then we were like, hey, I bet if we, instead of having 1 bunk bed in here with us 3 friends, we could get another bunk. And so then we got another bunk and rented that out for $200 a month. And then all of a sudden,
Oh my goodness,
we're making cash flow. And then we had another room, which was really a storage room that didn't have a window or a closet. But we rented that out as well to another guy. And so now we're making $500 a month. And then I even, at some point I told my roommates, I'm like, hey, I think I could sleep under the stairs and we could rent my bunk out too. And so this was before Harry Potter was ever written. I actually moved in under the stairs. I had a mattress and my dresser.
oh my goodness.
Started to get addicted to the cash flow coming in from our thing. So all said and done, we ended up having 10 guys in a little house in the ghetto suburbs of Salt Lake City. And we were cash flowing about $1,000 a month on top of our mortgage. And just like, we didn't read any books, we didn't go to any courses, we didn't have a real estate license. We just kind of happened upon it. I think they call that house hacking now is what
they do. It's funny that because I was doing the similar thing. I was a single mom and I needed a way to pay bills, and that's what I did. I rented rooms out and like smushed me and my kids together. And Brian was like, oh, well, that's house hacking. And he used to compare it to Harry Potter as well. It's funny.
Yeah. No, it's so that was my first kind of experience. And that's what kind of let me see, like, wow, what if I owned another house like this? I mean, we actually tried to start a business where we would make bachelor pads. It didn't work. But we thought it would be cool. But then the next property I bought was a 4-plex, which was just a straight typical rental property, and we were able to get financing on that, and actually me and one of the other friends did it. The third guy listened to his mom and didn't go buy another one, and so that's just kind of how the journey started. Where I started to see, wow, I can. What if I never have a job again and all I have is properties that pay me rent? It just kind of opened my eyes early on.
And so you earned good cash flow on that first standalone 4-plex?
Not really. actually did a really bad job of managing that, and we should have made good cash flow, but we weren't very good landlords, and we didn't fix it up properly. And then we let people get behind on their rent, and I'm not very good when that stuff happens. I kind of have a big bleeding heart, and the more excuses you have, the longer you can not pay, kind of thing. And so we actually didn't do great on that first fourplex. It wasn't until I started to hire property managers that my properties really started performing the way that they should. But that didn't stop me from seeing the potential and continuing on,
Yeah, no, I asked because, most people blunder their way through their first few properties, right? I mean, most people don't get it exactly right on the first go. So tell us a little bit about how you scaled from there.
It's probably, I didn't do a lot of it very purposefully. What it actually led me to do is, I wasn't married, I didn't have kids, I was 21. So it just let me not work more. And I did a lot more partying and hanging out and not really having any purpose, right, for a while. So it wasn't another like 4 years until I even bought another property. I was just pretty content there. I mean, I had a few off and on jobs, and I went and got my real estate license thinking, when we bought the fourplex, I was just shocked that somebody got paid $3,000 to help us do that. I was like, why? So I went and got my real estate license, but I didn't use it. So for like 3 years, I just kind of was sat stagnant. And then I happened upon a house that I could flip, and was able to flip my first house just kind of out of there. And I did terrible on that. I didn't do a very good job. So it didn't go well at first, but once I started to see the writing on the wall and started flipping houses, I started scaling up my house flipping first. And that's probably one of my bigger regrets, is that I kept flipping, 3 or 4 years in, just flipped houses, 5 or 6 a year at that time, and never kept any of them as rentals, still not quite grasping what I had in the beginning had figured out, But then once you start getting the cash flow and the time, and once I got married and started to have an actual why besides what am I doing Friday night, I really kind of turned my business into a business instead of just a source of income. And that's when I really had to get purposeful about things and start to scale up and get, more properties and figure out how to pay taxes and do all the hard stuff.
Oh, fun stuff.
Adulting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, is the same guys that you started all this with, have any of them followed you?
No, not at all. Both of them ended up getting married and buying a house, and we ended up selling that fourplex during the crash at a loss. And it turned them off. They didn't want to do real estate anymore, so they both have moved into the one house and lived in that one house ever since, and not bought any other real estate that I know of.
Wow.
So you never had a traditional 9-to-5 career at all?
Yeah, not really. I mean, I did get I had a couple of jobs. I actually worked for a bank in their loss mitigation department for a short period after I bought the fourplex, which really kind of opened my eyes to how mortgages work and how loss mitigation worked. And this was before the crash, when loss mitigation really became a thing. Mm-hmm. And that opened a lot of doors for me, just the knowledge I gained there. But I only worked there for like a year. Other than that, and it's true. I joke about this, but I honestly have been fired from every job I've ever had. I'm not much of an employee.
And how did you finance these deals? Because I assume you were a broke early 20-something in the beginning here, right? And you weren't sitting on piles of cash. So how did you go about financing these early deals?
The truth, I mean, the simple truth to that is I overpaid. Back then, I got both of those mortgages at 7.25%, which was the lowest interest rate they'd had ever seen at the time. And they had these programs. I think it was called the Nehemiah program or something, where the state would come in and pay your down payment at a little higher interest rate. And it was only a 3%, it was still back at 3% FHA. We were able to get those 100% funded through FHA and other grant programs, which, I think the first house we bought was 126,000 was what it was worth. And it had been on the market for 4 months. And with this whole Nehemiah thing, it ended up being like 135. So we ended up paying more than that house was worth. But because of the cash flow, that didn't matter very much. And same thing with the fourplex. We ended up paying, we actually were able to get some creative financing with the seller on that. But once again, because of that, we ended up paying technically more than we probably could have sold it for. But I wasn't thinking about that at all. I just was like, well, will the rents cover the mortgage so I don't have to go do other things? And so being willing to overpay for things can sometimes allow you to get property that you might not otherwise get. And, when you think about how, especially the last 20 years, every 5 to 10 years, our property is doubling almost. If you can get the cash flow right, it maybe doesn't matter as much as we think sometimes.
And how, as you've scaled up, how has your approach to financing changed over the years?
So, you get to the 10 conventional loans. You can only have 10 conventional loans, right?
At most. I mean, a lot of programs only allow 4.
Most of them will give you up to 10, unless that's changed. But I hit 10 a while ago, so maybe it has. Up until then, I didn't really think very hard about the financing. But now, pretty much, I try and burr everything, and so I'm usually buying it with hard money or my own money, depending on the situation. And then I get right now I've been getting a lot of DSCR loans or commercial loans in order to finance the properties. But the burr method that everyone talks about, which again, house hacking, wholesaling, burr method, all of these things I was doing before they became courses, I guess, and you had to brand them. But buying it and remodeling it and then getting all your money back so that you're essentially in it for $0 is kind of my go-to for everything.
Yeah, no, it's a great strategy. So, for those of you in the audience who aren't familiar with that acronym, BRRRR stands for buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat. So you pull your down payment back out when you refinance it after renovating it. Yeah, it's a fantastic strategy. So what has not gone according to plan for you? Because, every real estate investor has horror stories, right? I mean, I've got plenty, Deni has plenty. And in many ways, those are just as instructive, if not more instructive, than the deals that go right. So, what are some of the things that have gone wrong for you, throughout your real estate investing career?
Oh man, everything has gone wrong. We've had a lot of. I don't even know where to start. There's so many issues. I can tell you, early on in my career, on a fourplex that I owned, I didn't have a property manager. And, in the beginning, we all do this. We think, I can manage this on nights and weekends and whatever. And then once you get, I always tell even students and new people that are getting in, once you get to 3 or 4, you want to seriously think about getting property management. But us entrepreneurs don't really like to listen to people. So we'll still do 6 or 7 or 8, so I was getting a little overextended where all my nights and weekends were spent fixing leaks and mowing lawns and doing all the crap that you have to do when you're a property manager. Anyway, at that period, I bought this fourplex, and I was self-managing, doing the ads, doing everything myself. And this guy was a professional rent thief that lived in one of my units, and I didn't realize it. And so he would get behind, and I would, work with him, and one excuse after another. Next thing I know, the guy's like 4 months behind. I'm like trying to get him out. So I try to evict him once again on my own. And then he manipulates that system to where it keeps getting extended and pushed back. And then one of my tenants moved out without my knowledge, and he moved somebody else in to that unit, his girlfriend. It was a complicated family situation. He moved his girlfriend into the basement unit. And so I go over unbeknownst to me that squatters have rights, and now I have to evict her. And it turned into a 6-month opus where I ended up losing a whole bunch of money on this deal. And really kind of like taught me that there's way better uses of my time than managing those deals. Because, like nowadays, I kind of laugh at how silly I was with this guy, letting him go so far, because I can, Utah's a pretty, as far as evicting people, it's pretty landlord friendly. Like, we can get somebody out in 2 weeks. If I just hire the
Oh, wow.
attorney, that's all he does. Like,
Wow.
he can get him out. 30 days if they contest, 2 weeks if they don't. Like, it's not that difficult. And if you use an attorney and do it the right way, it costs me $500 and they're gone. And had I just gone that route, I could have saved myself a ton of money on that property. And it ended up being a fine property, but it was a really hard lesson that caused a lot of stress and anguish and stuff.
I hear you. Yeah, I've had professional tenants myself. It took me 11 months to get one guy out. And when I finally did get him out, he punched holes through every cabinet in the kitchen and ruined the flooring and all of that stuff. So I know how that goes.
Yeah.
And especially Utah seems a little more relaxed, but Philadelphia, I had one in Philly and it was a year, and she knew how to play the system, and Philly is tenant friendly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, what do we learn from that is learn the rules and how those things kind of work, because a professional rent thief can really, really get you if you're not careful and you're new at this,
Oh, yes.
Speaking of damage, I'll just tell you, one time I had a guy who, he had 3 Rottweilers, and we evicted. He got behind on his rent, and we sent him an eviction notice, and he didn't contest it, but he just left. And we walked into the house. In the living room, the whole floor had been torn out, and in the basement were these 3 Rottweilers that had been there for probably 2 weeks. No one cleaning up after him. No, nothing. There was no stair. The stairs had been torn out. He completely tore it out. It was crazy. I got the wildest pictures of it, but it was a huge, huge problem, and he just left his dogs behind. Yeah, it was crazy.
That's horrible.
Yeah, and wasn't even supposed to have pets, by the way.
Wow.
Wow.
Unbelievable, the things you see as a landlord.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give someone who's just getting into the real estate investing game? Whether as a landlord, a rental investor, as a flipper, someone, maybe they haven't bought any properties yet, maybe they've just bought 1 or 2. What's the best advice that you would give to that person? Or to your 23-year-old self, same concept here. What advice would you give to people who are just getting into this?
Yeah, because of my journey, I can say one thing for certain, and it's that you just need to take massive action. And what is more important than taking that action is to being okay with taking imperfect action. Because the only reason I got to where I am is because I just kind of what if it doesn't work, or what if I can't pay? Like, it just kind of, I just stumbled through it. I just jumped right in and figured it out. And I find so often, in the real estate community, I do speaking and seminars and things like that. Like, so many people are there and they're spending all this time learning and trying to make things perfect, and then they never take action. And it's kind of got me out of coaching and stuff so often, because I literally will tell people exactly what to do, and they just won't do it. So if you're just starting out, if you're just whatever you need to do to take that first step, take it. And like I said, my first 3 deals I overpaid for, and my parents told me not to do it, and everyone told me not to do it, and I made out like a bandit. I literally didn't have a job for 4 straight years. And when I got married, my wife thought I was this Monopoly guy, even though I didn't know what I was doing. So I didn't even do it right. And still investing in real estate was a great situation for me.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to make mistakes as a novice real estate investor. And that's something that Deni and I talk about all the time. And, you have to be okay with the fact that you're not going to get everything perfectly, especially in the first few deals. And that's part of that is the tuition that you're paying for a real estate investing education, right?
Yeah. And you can, and I will say this, I mean, if you get a mentor and you go learn, I think those are very valuable ways to pay. Or you can pay the fool's tax like I did and just kind of stumble your way through. But if you're just sitting on the sidelines waiting for the perfect deal, it's probably never gonna come. I mean, I can make, I flipped like 1,000 houses, and I probably only call 2 of those the perfect deal. A bunch of them
Right.
were just deals, And so I think the other thing, people just have a hard time getting comfortable with loss. And I try to tell people, like, I don't know any successful real estate investor that hasn't lost money. And they think, oh, I can't do this because what if I lose money? Well, what if you lose money? I mean, you'll figure it out and you'll move on and you'll get better. And so that's the only advice I've got.
I've lost money. I've lost a lot of money.
Have, probably.
Yeah. So, John, how can people connect with you? What are you up to these days? How can people reach out to you and connect with you, whether on real estate investing deals or anything else?
Honestly, the best way to get a hold of me nowadays is through Instagram or LinkedIn. Just DMs there work great. I mean, I'm happy to share email and phone, but those are literally harder to reach me nowadays. So if anyone wants to reach out, I respond to every DM I get.
John's Instagram is in the chat for anybody who wants to make a note of that.
Absolutely. Well, John, are there any other piece of advice or comments that you have for the audience before we call this episode complete?
No, just you can do more than you think you can. And the other thing I always like to tell people is there's more money out there than you realize. You just gotta ask for it. It's there.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. It's one of the things that I hear. One of the questions that Deni and I get all the time from new investors is, they kind of fret and they chew their fingernails over financing and funding and where am I going to get the money? And honestly, that is one of the easier parts of real estate investing. If you find a good deal, there's always going to be someone who's willing to fund it for you. Finding good deals is way harder.
Absolutely.
As is managing contractors and managing tenants and managing property managers. And, these are much harder parts of real estate investing. But everyone gets very fixated on the money piece. So,
and that's because it scares them. But it really, they got to take our advice. It really is the easiest part of the equation. If you have a good deal, find the deal first, and the money will come.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I also put the article about John that we did. It's in the chat as well. It's a great, just a great read.
Well, John, thank you so much for taking some time to join us today. We really appreciate it, and I love what you're up to.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's great. Anytime we can chat, anytime. I love it. I love chatting about this stuff now with people. So
great. Thank you so much. Really, it's been great. I'm sure people are loving it. I see the comments.
Okay.
All right. Well, hopefully we'll have to bring you back on the show next year and hear about what you're up to then.
Yeah.
In the meantime.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Have a good day, everyone.